When the Brooklyn Nets tip off their regular season on Wednesday, it will mark the 10th season the Nets have called Brooklyn home. New York Post Brooklyn Nets beat writer Brian Lewis will be at Barclays Center for the season opener against the New Orleans Pelicans. And Brian joins me now for a season and Game 1 preview. Brian, how's it going?
All right. How you doing?
I'm doing just fine. Glad that NBA basketball is back. Now, Brian, we've discussed all the drama that surrounded the Nets in the offseason. So where do you see the focus of this team as they ready to tip off the regular season?
I mean, that kind of depends on the character, right? I mean, I've talked to a lot of people who played at this level or similar, and it's pretty split. A number of them have pointed out that clearing the air, honest talk, even if it gets kind of ugly, is better than the alternative. It's teams that don't talk, teams that, have factions and cliques and leave a lot of things unsaid. Those are the teams that don't win. So this will either fracture them or it's going to make them stronger, and it depends on the character of the players involved.
Right, so it's a situation where we will have to see, which brings me to my next question. How much pressure is on this team, particularly the head coach Steve Nash, to get off to a good start this season?
I'd say a lot of pressure, and it's not going to be easy. You look through their first 20 games, they've got 12 on the road. They've got 10 against playoff teams, 11 if you count play-in teams, and 5 back-to-backs. I think all of those are probably the toughest in the East, or the worst, least conducive in the East to winning, shall we say. So I think, A, that you're right, there is a lot of pressure on them to get off to a quick start, and B, that's not going to be easy. If they get off to a hot start, they'll have to earn it. It's not going to be handed to them by the schedule makers.
Not going to be handed to them by the schedule makers at all, and we'll see how good they are based on the test through that start. Now, we got to talk about the stars, Brian. Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving, they've had the expectations of bringing a championship to BK. Are the Nets championship contenders this season?
Yes. Oh, they're contenders. I would not call them favorites, nor should they be. I think they were probably a little bit overrated last year. They might actually be underrated this year because the drama that they went through this summer is kind of skewing the betting odds. So they are probably among a second tier of contenders. Once you get past the Golden States and the Milwaukees and the Bostons, I think they're probably in a second tier. They're probably underrated as a contender right now. And PSA, that is not me telling anybody to bet. That's between them and whatever betting service they use.
I like that you're not telling anybody to bet. All right, let's get to the games. It is the first game of the NBA season for the Brooklyn Nets. I'm sure the fans are excited. And first up, the Nets will host the Pelicans. No Seth Curry and Joe Harris for this one. What can Brooklyn fans expect the starting lineup and the rotation look like in Game 1?
I would expect the lineup to look the same as it has the past few games. So I would expect the big three to all play and start. I would expect Nick Claxton at center, and I would expect Royce O'Neal on the wing. Then you're going to throw in your Patty Mills and your Day'Ron Sharps. Cam might get some minutes. So I would expect a pretty similar starting lineup and rotation to what we've seen late in the preseason. Now, once you get Joe and Seth back, that's a different story. That's going to make minutes more difficult to come by for Cam. Probably chew into Patty Mills' minutes. But I have no idea when you're going to see Joe. And I have no idea when we're going to see Seth.
Now, when you look at this Game 1, Brian, a lot of the talk will be about Zion Williamson. He's back and healthy for New Orleans. So what will the Nets look to do to stop him in the season opener?
Well, you're going to have to throw different bodies at him, but I do think they're going to have a healthy dose of Ben Simmons. This is a team that's been pretty adamant about switching as much as possible. I think you might see a little bit less of that this year. And when you have a guy who is runner-up for Defensive Player of the Year in Ben, that's a weapon, and they have to use that. They probably eschewed some switches and let him stick with Giannis whenever possible, and he did start on Karl Anthony Towns. I would expect more of that when Zion comes to town.
All right, we'll see how they defend Zion Williamson, the great young player for the New Orleans Pelicans. Now, last thing, Brian, the Nets, they start the season playing 5 teams that made the playoffs last spring. Is that a good thing for this squad to be tested against playoff level competition early on?
Well, I'm not necessarily sure I would say it's good. I think, as we discussed, I think a fast start is pretty much a mandate for this team, especially when you look at, all the questions around this team and this organization and questions of Steve Nash. I'd say a fast start would be better. Now, of course, the best of all possibilities is to get a fast start against playoff teams. That's the best possible scenario. Um, but you have to win these games. And as you point out, that's not going to be easy.
It's definitely not going to be easy. 5 playoff teams to start the season for the Brooklyn Nets. That season gets started on Wednesday night at the Barclays Center against New Orleans Pelicans. As I said, Brian Lewis, New York Post Nets beat reporter, he will be there. Brian, enjoy the games. Basketball's back. I know you're excited.
Oh, I'm excited. Can't wait.
Go. Enjoy.